All right, good day, classes. This is our first lesson in financial literacy. And basically what that means is that we're going to be teaching you guys now how to use money in an everyday real world situation. So we're going to begin on page 267. Now I say we're going to begin on page 267, but actually page 267 will be discussed in class because it takes into account that we didn't do any of the other sections before this. So we can't really start off right on page 267. So instead, I'm going to go ahead and begin on page 268. And here we begin with sales tax and total cost. Now this is something that everyone can relate to. Anyone who's ever bought anything knows these two things, and that's sales tax and total cost. Sales tax is defined as the additional amount of money charged on items that people buy. And everything you buy, pretty much except for, I think, basic food, has a sales tax added. That's how the state and we make money as a civilization in our country to buy different things or to afford things. Now, it goes on to say also, the total cost of an item is the regular price plus the sales tax. That is extremely important to remember, that the total cost of an item is the regular price plus the sales tax. So regular price plus the sales tax. The sales tax is always given to you as a percent, and the regular price will always be just in regular dollars. And those two things added up together will give us total cost. So we'll call that the TC. Total cost is the regular price of the thing plus the sales tax. Now, sales tax is different from state to state, and even in some cases from city to city, depending on where you are in the country. In Texas, sales tax is 8.25%. But in these examples, we're going to be using some different sales tax amounts to help us understand better how it works. So let's go ahead and look at example 1. I'm going to go ahead and just take out all the stuff that we have here, all the work and everything they have, from right here to about, whoops, I think I went too far there. Let's go a little further up. I don't know why my pen's acting up a little bit. Let's go ahead and just change this around a bit. Whoops, let's go ahead and start all over again because I don't know what happened there. It got all crazy on me. All right, so we'll start from here. And, oh, I see what's going on now. Okay, well, we'll just X out this whole thing. So the first method, in example 1, here's the situation that they give us. We are told that Drew wants to buy exercise equipment that costs $140, and the sales tax is 5.75%. What is the total cost of the equipment? So the first way we're going to show you how to do this is by adding the sales tax to the regular price. So here's all you do. To find the total cost, we'll call that TC, you're going to add the sales tax, which is the percent, to the regular price. Now that sounds very simple, but it requires you to do a couple of more steps. So let's first write down what we know. We know that our sales tax, which is always a percent, is 5.75%. And we're going to add that to the cost of the exercise equipment, which was $140. Now, the mistake most students want to make is they want to add literally just these two numbers. But you can't. This is measuring in dollars, and this is measuring in percent. You need to figure out how to turn this percent into dollars so you can add the two together. And here's how you're going to do it. You are going to take the 5.75% and turn it into a decimal. Right now, it's just a percent because it has a percent sign. There's a little trick we use. It's called Dr. Pepper or DP. And here's how the trick is explained. When you want to turn a decimal number into a percent, you move the decimal point 2 times to the right. For example, if I had 0.50, which is a decimal number, and I want to turn it into a percent, I move the decimal point 2 spaces to the right. So if I do that, I move it over once and twice, and I end up with 50%. Now, let's say I want to work backwards. Let's say I have a percent, like 25%, that I want to turn into a decimal. Well, I have to first find the decimal point. Since this is a whole number, the decimal point is hidden after the 5. To make it into a decimal, I move it over twice to the left, 1, 2, and that gives me 0.25. So the trick is, whenever you have a percent, to turn into a decimal, simply slide the decimal point 2 spaces to the left. If you're given a decimal number and you want to turn it into a percent, slide the decimal 2 spaces to the right. That's how DP works. So in this case, since I have 5.75%, that's a percent, I want to turn it into just a pure decimal answer. So to go from percent to decimal, I have to move my decimal point 2 spaces to the left. So it's going to go 1, 2. But when I do that, I have an extra space. I fill those spaces in with zeros. So my decimal point was originally right here between the 5 and the 7. It says up here to go from a percent to a decimal, move it twice to the left. 1, 2. I had a gap right here, so I filled that up with a 0. So now I turned my percent into a decimal, and that is 0.0575. You take that and you multiply now times how much the thing is that you want to buy, 140. Now for the sake of saving time, I'm going to go ahead and use a calculator to multiply these two things. And what we have here is 140, 140, whoops, missing it to come out, 140, 140, there we go, times 0.0575. 0.0575. The answer I get is $8.05. So when I multiply these two things, I know I'm adding $8.05 in tax. I add that to the price of the exercise equipment, which was $140. Together now, those two things will give me total cost. So I know this looks a little confusing because you're wondering why we went from addition to multiplication. And that's because when you have a percent and dollars, you can't just add them. You have to turn the percent into a decimal and then multiply. And that's exactly what we did. The answer you get is the amount of tax you're going to add. So I'm going to add $8.05 to to $140. And to get my total cost of $148.05. That's how you figure out the total amount. So that's the first way to do it. So the first way, I guess, if you want to make a little note, method 1 is just take your percent, turn it into a decimal. Your next step is to take that decimal number and multiply it times however much the thing is that you're paying for or buying. And the answer you get is the tax you're going to add back to the original thing. So it's basically a 3-step process for the first method. Now, the second method is actually a lot faster because it kind of helps you skip a step. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go ahead and erase this part of the screen now. And let's go ahead and just take everything off that we have here. And there we go. And now, in the book, I believe, it actually asks us to go ahead and find the sales tax now by adding the percent of tax to 100. So here's what's going on in the next method. In method 2, and I'll change the color on this one, for method 2, they want us to go ahead and add the percent of tax to 100. So add the percent to 100%. Here's exactly what that means. So to find the total cost now, there's an easier way. You want to know exactly what percent you're multiplying everything by. Well, here's how you do it. You know that the exercise equipment itself costs $140. $140 is 100% of the price. That's the entire price in a percent form. We're also going to add to that the sales tax, which is 5.75%. All right, so I have 100% and 5.75%. Both of these things are percents, so they can be added. When I add them, I get 105.75%. Now the trick is just like the last one. To find the total cost of what it is that you're buying, you take the full percent that we just got, this thing, 105.75%, and you're going to multiply that times the original amount that the thing cost. In this case, our exercise equipment, which cost $140. Now remember, we can't multiply percents. We have to turn them into decimals using DP. So since I have a percent already, in order to turn it into a decimal number, I have to move the decimal points 2 spaces to the left. That's going to go 1, 2 between the 1 and the 0. So now I'm going to have 1.0575 in parentheses times the amount of money that the exercise equipment cost me, 140, I'll have to multiply those two things out. And for the sake of this example, to speed things up, I'll go ahead and use my calculator function again. So $1.0575 times $140 is $148.05, exactly the answer we got before. Now, but this one did everything for us all in one big step. I would suggest using method 2, but sometimes method 1 is easier when you want to know just exactly how much extra tax you're adding or how much of a tip you're adding or wherever it is. Both of them will get you the right answers. They just do it in 2 different ways. Now go ahead and take these examples that I just did for you, and let's go ahead and try to work on the got it's on the bottom of the page. Let me clear everything off here and go back down to my page. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Clear that up again. All right. And scroll down to the bottom of the page and take a look. Oops. There we go. So here's that second method I just did. They just explained to you in a different way. And then now, use either method to solve for this. Remember, 5.5 is not only a fraction, it's a fraction percent. If I were you, I would go ahead and change the fraction part into a decimal. So you have 5.5%. And then you can use this number to change and work in your problem. After you've done this problem, or if you have questions about it, come by in the morning before class to ask any questions, because we are going to be discussing this in class on Tuesday. When you've completed the got it, let's go ahead and go to the next page on 267. So continuing with our lesson now, we begin, not 267, 269, excuse me. Apparently I'm subtracting numbers instead of adding them. And we have a second example here. Here's another type of example you guys will be using in real life, and that is the idea of a tip. A customer wants to tip 15% on a restaurant bill that is $35. What will be the total bill with tip? Now, 15% actually isn't just a random number that the book chose. It's considered to be socially the standard for all tipping. Whenever you go to any restaurant and you're served by a waiter or waitress, 15% is considered to be average. And that's if you have decent, good service. Of course, if you really like the person helping you, you might tip more. And maybe if you have really poor service, you might tip less. I can tell you as a server that we don't get paid minimum wage when we allow server. Most servers don't get paid minimum wage, so all their money comes from tips. So it's always a good idea to be a good tipper when the service, of course, is good. The percent helps because sometimes if you're, charging a lot of money on a bill, it's not just fair to leave $5 for all that work that a waiter or waitress had to do. So we use a certain percentage, and we're going to show you now, or I'm going to show you now, how to calculate that percentage when you are trying to figure out your tip. So I'll go ahead and work over here in this first space. And it says in method 1 to go ahead and add the tip to the regular price. So first we're going to figure out what our tip is just by itself. So to figure out the tip that we're going to leave at the restaurant or wherever you're at, what you do is you take the amount, the percent, that's 15%, and then you're going to multiply it times whatever your total bill is. In this case, $35. But remember, we don't ever work with percents in a percent form. We have to turn percents into decimals. So I'm going to use my old friend DP, Dr. Pepper. To turn a percent into a decimal, I move the decimal point 2 spaces to the left. So you may be asking, well, I don't see a decimal point in 15. There is one, but it's invisible. It's right here after the 5, because 15 is a whole number. So if my decimal point is right here and I move it twice to the left, it's going to go 1, 2, which turns 15% into 0.15. Now I can multiply that number times my amount, which is $35. When I multiply these two things, 0.15 times 35, and I'll show you here what we get an answer of $5.25. This just tells me how much tip I'm going to add. And the question was, what will the total bill be with the tip? So here's the tip. I still got to add the bill for all the food and everything we ate, $35, and you get an answer of $40.25. Not too bad. Pretty easy. That's a good tip. $5, good average for this kind of bill. Now let's go ahead and try the same thing with the other method. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this now, clear everything off the screen, and I'm going to go ahead and scroll down so we can see how to do the next one. Add the percent of a tip to 100%. So let's consider, just like we did, whoops, I obviously don't know what I'm doing with this pen. There we go. So let's consider what we did in the last example in part 2 and do the same thing here. We know that 100%, that the whole bill cost $35. So 100% of our bill is $35. All right? We want to leave 5.75, excuse me, I'm using the wrong example. We want to leave 15% of a tip. So if we have 100% plus 15%, that means we want to leave 115% total payment. So all you do for this now is you take this total percent and turn it into a decimal. According to DP, to turn a percent into a decimal, you move the decimal point 2 spaces to the left. From percent to decimal, it moves twice to the left. If I take the number 115, the decimal really is right here hidden. I'm going to move it twice to the left, 1, 2, and then drop it right there. Now I take that decimal number and multiply it times the total amount that my bill cost, which is $35. And with the calculator, when I multiply 35 times 1.15, I get an answer of 40.25, which is the same answer we got before. It just did it a lot faster. So that'll be my total bill when I sign my check or whatever, including the tip for my server. Once again, not a bad amount. If you have any questions about this method, it's very important that you come in and ask these questions before class, or at least at the very beginning of this discussion before we move on. Now, having said that, let's go ahead and look at example number 3 further down on this page. Now we have a haircut, which everyone's gone at some point in their life. A haircut costs $20. Sales tax is 4.75%. The question now is, will $25 be enough or sufficient to cover the haircut with tax and a tip? So there's 2 ways to do it. And the easiest way to do it, I think, would be to combine everything as far as the percents. So let's go ahead and get a blank screen here that we can draw with or write on. I'll go ahead and kind of take everything here right off the screen. And let's go ahead and begin into it. Okay, let's talk about percents. We know that we're going to pay 100% total for the haircut because we can't not pay for the haircut. We also know that we want to leave a 15% tip. And we know that we have to pay a 4.75% sales tax rate. So let's add up all 3 of these percents together. 100 plus 15 is 115%, plus 4.75 is 119.75%. So that's what we're going to multiply our total amount by. Well, how much was our haircut? Our haircut was $20. I'm going to multiply that times 1. Well, actually, before I even do that, I've got to change my percent now into a decimal using DP. If this is a percent and I want to turn it into a decimal, I have to move the decimal point 2 times to the left. 1, 2. That gives me 1.1975. Multiply this number times 20, and that'll tell me how much I need for everything altogether. So I'll go ahead and use my handy dandy calculator, and I'm going to do 1.1975 times 20. Remember, multiplication doesn't matter if I go this times this first or this times this first. It's all the same thing. When I do that, I get a total of $23.95. That's the exact amount I would need in order to cover everything. The question I was asked, though, was, is $25 sufficient? Does that mean, is it enough to cover everything I want? Well, if I only need this much and I have $25, then yes, it will be sufficient. And that's exactly what it tells us down here if you check along with it in your book. Having said that, now go ahead and work on the got it's. Let's go ahead and move this page up just a bit. And work on B and C. They want you to find the tip, his taxi cab driver, 20%. So they want the total cost. You got to find the tip, add it to the cost, and find the total. Here, they want to know the total cost again. So you have the price, and then you have the tip here. You have tip and tax you have to combine all together. I would suggest using method 2 for all these. It seems to be the fastest. But you use whatever you want. Good luck, and if you have any questions, please feel free to come back and ask in the morning. I'm going to go ahead and move on to our final example here, which is on page 270 at the top. And here we have our multi-step example 4. A store pays $56 for a GPS navigation system, it says here. And then it goes on to say that the markup is 25%. A markup means, when a store sells something, they buy their products from another company. If they sold the products for the exact amount that they bought them for, they wouldn't make any money because they would be paying back the place they bought them all from, and they wouldn't have anything in their pockets. So all stores mark up what they get so they can make some money themselves after they pay back whoever it is that made the stuff for them. So here we have the store. They spend $56 for a navigation system. The markup is 25%. So how much more is the selling price than what the store paid for it? So the markup means now we're going to also be adding a percentage. So let's go ahead and just figure this out. We know that the store has to pay the full 100% for the GPS device. They also want to mark it up by 25%. So together, that's a total of 125%. But remember, we don't work with percents. 125% needs to be turned into a decimal. So I'm going to use DP. That means take your percent and turn it into a decimal. You move the decimal point 2 times to the left. It's right here. It's invisible. I'll move it over once, twice. I get now a decimal number of 1.25. So all I have to do now is take the $56 that the store pays when they bought this thing, multiply it times my new percent, 1.25 as a decimal, and 56 times 1.25 is $70. That's how much the store will sell it. And that's what the question is asking. How much more is the selling price? So we know how much the store sells it for. We know how much the store got it for, which is $56. So then what was the markup? How did we go from $56 to $70? Well, that's a difference of $14. So 25% markup means that we added $14 more to the original price so we can make some money. That's how markup works. That's also how discount works. Instead of adding what you want, you would subtract it and figure it out that way. So let's go ahead, after explaining this, let's go ahead and look at our next guided practice problems. And on your own, you need to work on numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those will be discussed in class. If you have any questions, please come in the morning so we can verify your work. Thank you and good luck, guys.